stars, biggest bars, they got rivers of gold. But the wind goes right through you, no place for the old. When you first took my hand on a cold Christmas Eve, you promised me Broad Street was waiting for me. You were handsome, you were pretty, you're the king of South Philly. When the band finished playing, they howled out for more. The leathers were swinging, all the drunks they were singing. We fought on a corner, then danced through the night. The sound of the Silver Ages choir.
We're going to let a chief steal the show? Hell no.
Bells were ringing out for Christmas Day.
Welcome into Uncaged Sports Talk, episode 22. What a Christmas it was yesterday. Nursing a hangover. I had a little fun yesterday. Some people that I know I've been texting, they know I've had a little fun. I had a little fun yesterday on Christmas, but it's Christmas. If you're not having fun, what are you doing? Had fun at the Eagles game, nursing a little hangover. But we'll get down to business. That game yesterday, a lot of Eagles fans are being negative about it. But it showed signs to me of them getting back on track. The Eagles yesterday on Christmas Day showed signs of getting back on track. It was 2 plays that made the game look close. Before I get into the rest of the game, or before I get into the game and truly start to talk about it, I want to say I hope everyone had a Merry Christmas. Hope everyone had a good Christmas. Hope Santa was good to you. And I hope you have a very happy New Year. As you can tell by the title, Happy New Year to all. I will be having some guests on next week as we kick off the new year and as the college football season ends. I will be going over my picks for the college football playoff in this episode. But that'll come up shortly. Back to business though. The Eagles. What a game last night. There was the offense, you're supposed to beat the Giants how you did to a degree. It's supposed to be worse than it was. But the offense is getting back on track. It was 2 plays that made that game look close. 2 plays. That's it. The Dallas Goedert where he slipped and Jalen Hurts throw a pick 6. You probably score there and you make it 40 to 18 instead of 33-25. And then you have the Boston Scott where Olamide Zaccheaus ran right into him for some odd reason. We were all confused in the stands. We're like, what the hell is Zaccheaus doing? Running right towards Boston Scott. I get you're supposed to run back on a kickoff. But once he catches it, you go towards your blocks. You go make a block. But he's continued running straight towards Boston Scott and ran right into him. That was a little odd. I was a little thrown off by that. I was like, what the hell was that? By Olamide Zaccheaus. I think I did a good pronunciation on his name right there, but that's neither here or there. But yeah, it was 2 plays. You gave the Giants great field position there, which that's another touchdown for them. That's another 7 points you gave them for free, basically. So without the pick 6, where Goddard slipped, which is a little fluky, and without that Zaccheaus thing, which is a little fluky. They both seem fluky to me, which is why I'm encouraged. They were both like fluky turnovers. But without those 2 plays, you win 40-11. If we would have won 40-11, you know how ecstatic our fan base would be? The Eagles fan base would be talking about, especially after the Niners lost and how they lost. The Eagles fan base would be talking about, we're going back to the Super Bowl. But it's because it looks closer than the game actually was. Fans aren't satisfied. I was happy with what I saw. I saw signs that will get them back on track potentially. This Cardinals game in this 3-game stretch is the one I was truly worrying about. With Jonathan Gannon coming up, you know he probably has this game circled. Some people on the Eagles secondary probably have this game circled. Some people on the Eagles team probably have this circled. But you know Gannon definitely has this one circled. The team he was in the Super Bowl with as a defensive coordinator, coming back to Philadelphia. He's going to want to make an impact and have a good game. His team's fighting for him too. His team's been in a lot of close games this year. They only have 3 wins, but they've been a solid team for the most part this year. But this is if we get past this game, then you take care of business against the Giants. You beat them handedly. Don't let, as long as you don't have those fluky plays, it should be a blowout. This week, as long as we don't have those fluky plays, 31-13. That's probably going to be my official prediction. Yeah, I will say it now. 31-13. I'll put a banner up so people can see it. Eagles win 31-13 against the Arizona Cardinals and JG and Jonathan Gannon. You should be able to win this game handedly like that. Like, the Cardinals, are they good? Are they a good team? No. But they're not a horrible team. Their record would indicate they're a horrible team. But they've played a lot of games tough. And they've won games. And they've beat the Cowboys, who are a good team. They won some other games against solid teams. They've been a solid team. They've competed in most of their games this year. But the Eagles should be able to go out there and win 31-13 against the Arizona Cardinals. And you almost put the division away because then you go on and play the Giants again the following week, granted at MetLife on that horrible turf. But if they can get through that game, I'll be happy with where the team's headed. If they get through these next two games and win soundly, I'll be happy with where the team's headed going into the playoffs. People need to relax. Let the team get back in a groove. If they lose one of these games, it's full on panic mode. Full on panic mode. But if you win, you're right back. If you win these two games, and even if the Niners lose, you're right back in the driver's seat in the NFC. You're right back in the driver's seat. You're right back in the driver's seat in the NFC if the Niners lose. And there's a chance with the way the Rams are playing, they might be able to drop the game. Brock Purdy looked human. Against the Ravens last night, or against the Ravens on Monday night. So you got what you want right in front of you. Granted, you need the Cowboys to win. As much as I hate to do it, I need the Cowboys to win a football game this Sunday against the Detroit Lions. I hate to say it, but I will be rooting for the Dallas Cowboys on Monday night against the Giants. Like, if the Lions control their own destiny right now, even if the Eagles win these next two games, if the Lions win their next two and they play the Cowboys and Vikings, they should beat the Vikings. If they beat the Cowboys, they're the number 2 seed. If the Niners lose, Lions are the number 1 seed. Now, am I as worried about going into Detroit as I would be going in like San Fran? No. I'd be like, season's over if we go to San Fran. Or season's over if we go to Dallas. But I think the Eagles can take care of their own destiny. Take care of what's in front of them, win their next two. So you don't got to worry about the division. So you can afford for the Cowboys to beat the Lions. And then the Cowboys beat the Lions. That puts you at least in the 2 seed. And then hopefully somehow the Rams can sneak out a W against a division rival, Week 18, the San Francisco 49ers, and you're right back in the number 1 seed. So I think, as you can tell by the title, my answer to Eagles back on track, yes. I think the Eagles are heading back in the right direction. The ship got steered a bit. I'm excited. I'm excited for these next 2 games. Should be able to win soundly and head into the playoffs on a good note. Get those last 3 games out of your mouth, like the bad taste out of your mouth. Everyone's had a rough patch this year. Yours just came at a weird time in December, which is when you don't really want it. But you have 3 games to get right. And the offense had that to a degree last night. Now, I want to give my predictions as we got the college football playoff coming up this weekend. The beginning of the college football playoff, Alabama versus Michigan, Washington versus Texas, and then the winners play the following week in a national championship. Here are my predictions I'm not the biggest college football fan. I'll preface this all by saying that. So just going based off of everything, I mean, a little stuff here and there that I see and watch. And it's a little casual, like a casual bracket, casual prediction. So I'm a casual college football fan. As good as Michigan's been, they're playing Alabama. Alabama just knocked off a team that hadn't lost in 30 games. They just beat Georgia in the SEC championship game, and Georgia hadn't lost a football game in 30 games. And Alabama was the first team to beat them in that stretch. Alabama, I think, on a roll after that Georgia win. I think they're going to go in there and beat Michigan at the Rose Bowl and head to the college and head to the national championship. John Harbaugh does, or not John Harbaugh. Jim Harbaugh doesn't have a great track record in big games. He lost the Super Bowl against his brother John. He lost last year in the college football playoff. He doesn't have the year before he lost in the college football playoff. He doesn't have a great track record in big games. His team has come up small in big games at every level he's been at. I think Alabama, Nick Saban, Jalen Milroe come out with the W against Michigan and head to the national championship. And then on the other side of the bracket, Michael Penix at Washington versus Quinn Ewers in Texas. Texas might be here again next year, but they are, because they're going to have Arch Manning back. They're going to have Arch Manning at quarterback, which will be very fun to see. At least he probably will be their starter, my guess would be. But that's next year. This year, Texas versus Washington. I got the Texas Longhorns, hook 'em horns. I don't know how they do it. Hook 'em horns, I think, like this. Jalen Hurts and CeeDee Lamb would do this. Horns down. But the hook 'em horns, the Texas Longhorns, beat the Washington Huskies and head to the national championship. Quinn Ewers has been on a tear recently, and this sets up a rematch from earlier this year and a rematch from last year. These two teams have played each other back-to-back years. The first year, Alabama won, but that's because Quinn Ewers got hurt in the game. This year, Texas won. Quinn Ewers had a great game against Alabama. That almost cost Alabama from getting in, but that's only Alabama's only loss on the year against the number 3 team in the nation. I think in a rematch, Alabama and Nick Saban will not lose twice to the Texas Longhorns. Nick Saban won't let a second loss to the same team happen in the same year. Nick Saban and the Alabama Crimson Tide are going to win it for Roll Tide Willie. If any of you watch TikTok, you may have seen him here and there. He's a guy, he's like an older guy from Alabama. He says, we don't give a piss about nothing but the Tide or whatever. And he's like, Blitz, Bama, Blitz. But yeah, the Alabama and the Crimson Tide win the national championship this year. All these teams could be back next year. Washington is going to be harder because they won't have Michael Penix and they'll have a harder schedule. But Texas is going to have Arch Manning, the nephew of Eli and Peyton, son of Cooper Manning, grandson of Archie Manning. And Michigan, if Jim Harbaugh is back, could be back here. I don't know if he will be. He could dash to the NFL. There was actually a report that came out. Michigan offered him a 10-year deal worth $125 million with a big clause in it, though. He can't dash to the NFL if he signs that deal, which we'll see what happens with that. I think he's going to go to the NFL this year. I'd like to see him go to the Bears and Justin Fields. If the Bears actually do the smart thing and take a receiver and build around Justin Fields. But that's neither here or there. We can get into that in a few weeks after this national championship when the coaching cycle starts to go through. Alabama wins the national championship in 2024, the 2023-2024 season. Now, this week, I will not be doing my NFL power rankings on this episode. They will be posted on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, and Facebook. So you can find those on those platforms. Because I will be doing a Luke's list later in this episode, where I break down my top sports memories from this year as we come to a close on 2023. I almost said 2022 for some reason. This year is just flown by, but we come to a close on 2023. I'll give my top memories from the year, just for what I've had, what I've went through this year, stuff I've been doing this year, my best memories from this year. Before we get into that, though, I want to let you all know to head over and visit my friend Dan the Man Stanley at Sheridan Nissan, where they will hook you up with a new car. Just let them know Luke Sarank and Uncaged Sports Talk sent you. Now, for Luke's locks for the week. I get the Bears -2.5. The Bears are on fire right now. Justin Fields is looking good, trying to compete for his job, keep his job. They're playing the Atlanta Falcons. Falcons are coming off of a good win against the Colts this past weekend on Christmas Eve. But the Bears are playing really good right now. Justin Fields is playing some good football, trying to keep his job so they can go build around him and get a Marvin Harrison like they should. If they can get a Marvin Harrison Jr. and DJ Moore and build around Justin Fields, you got something brewing there in Chicago. You got 2 top picks, so take Marvin Harrison Jr., then take an O lineman and build around Justin Fields, get an offensive head coach. The Bears got something brewing there. -2.5. Bears beat the Atlanta Falcons. Then the Rams, I got -6.5 against the New York Football Giants. The Rams are probably the hottest team right now in football, besides like the Browns. The Rams -6.5. I like that number a lot for them. I think this is double-digit game. I think it's a 2 touchdown game, maybe more, maybe 2.5 touchdown game, 2 to 3 touchdown game. Excuse me. Rams -6.5 against the Giants, though. Then I like the Cardinals +12.5 against the Eagles. As much as I hate to say that, actually, my prediction that I did originally was different from what I have on this. I wrote this down before I came up with my prediction. The 31-13 felt like a good prediction, like on the spot. But for Luke's locks, if you're going to bet it, I would take the Cardinals +12.5. I know that's like an oxymoron right there, but if you're going to bet it, I would take the Cardinals +12.5. The Eagles are playing a bit shaky right now. Gannon's going to win it. But what the game should be, and that's why I came up with that 31-13 score. That's what the game should be as the Eagles start to head towards the playoffs. But +12.5 for the Cardinals, if you're going to bet it, I think that's a side to take. Then the Jaguars, -6.5. Trevor Lawrence has not been what he was supposed to this year. He's had down year, average year. Time to have a conversation about Trevor Lawrence. Trevor Lawrence has been shaky this year at best. He's been above average at best this year, and he's dragging the Jaguars team down. They're 8-7. They play the Panthers though this week. I think this could be a get-right game for the Jaguars and Trevor Lawrence, a team that had high expectations coming into the year. -6.5. I think they get right in this game against the Panthers. Jaguars cover that and more. And then the Chiefs, another struggling team. The Chiefs are struggling mightily this year. I saw a stat before coming on here. The Raiders didn't complete a single pass in the second half of that game. Or in the second, third, and fourth quarter. They didn't complete a single pass. And they still beat the Chiefs. That offense is not what it was before. Travis Kelce's having a down year. Maybe spending too much time with Tay-Tay, with Taylor Swift. Making too many Christmas albums with Jason Kelce. That team is not what it has been in the past. But that being said, I like the Chiefs -7.5. against the Cincinnati Bengals on New Year's Eve at 4:25. This game was supposed to be a good game, but then Joe Burrow got hurt, which takes away the lust of this game. I don't think Jake Browning keeps up with Patrick Mahomes here. Last week, a lot of people didn't think the Raiders would keep up, but it was a divisional matchup. But the Chiefs minus 7.5 against the Bengals, I like that number all day long. I think the Chiefs win by 10, 13. Chiefs minus 7.5. You can lock that one. And then for some honorable mentions, I like Alabama +2. As I already went over, I have Alabama winning and heading to the national championship and winning it all. I like them +2 against Michigan. And then Texas with Quinn Ewers, I like minus 4.5 against Washington. I think that's like a 10-point game against Washington to head to the national championship. Texas, Alabama as my honorable mentions for the picks. I think they both cover. I think Alabama wins outright and covers. And I think Texas minus 4.5, they cover by 4.5 and more. Now, as we wrap up 2023 and episode 22 of Uncaged Sports Talk, I want to go over my top 5 memories of 2023. Loose list. Starting with the honorable mention, starting this podcast, Uncaged Sports Talk, has been a good memory for me. It's keeps my foot in the door of the sports media world, lets me talk about sports, gives me a platform where I can come on, talk about sports, give my opinion, and I can have guests on, friends on, talk about it, do it with them. But that's an honorable mention. Starting Uncaged Sports Talk in August has been a good memory of mine this year. Phillies versus Braves. NLDS Game 4 comes in at number 5. That comes in at number 5 for me just because how fun that game was. I was at Game 4 in 2022, the year when the Phillies went to the World Series. This year they didn't get there. They choked against the Diamondbacks. But that Game 4 against Spencer Strider was insane. When Spencer Strider made the comments about the fans, that there shouldn't be fans in the stands, we gave Spencer Strider hell that night. We gave Strider hell that night, and he was probably pissed. He probably couldn't even hear his own self think. I know I couldn't in the stands at that game. Coming in at number 4 last year, and I'm doing it again this year. I'll have some guests on that I'm going with. But last year I went to Vegas for the second year in a row for a FPN, Free Poker Network thing. We'll talk about that on here the next week. Going to be a more lighthearted episode to start the new year. But last year I went to Vegas. That was a very fun episode. Not episode. What am I talking about? That was a very fun memory. I remember the first day out there, me and 3 other people, I'll name drop them, but I'm not going to drop the last name or anything, as I wouldn't do that. But Sam, Jim, and Maya, we went to a mini golf place, glow in the dark in Vegas. And before that, someone I know gave me a quarter of an edible, homemade edible. Kids, don't do an edible. If you haven't, don't do it. But they gave me a quarter of a homemade edible, which was very strong. I don't know if I regret it, but it was just funny at the time. I was like, hell, this sucks. But I took the edible. We went to play mini golf in a glow in the dark place. We did a bet. Loser has to buy everyone else shots. You guys want to guess who lost, but also got a hole in one? I got a hole in one and still lost at mini golf. It was a very fun trip last year, though. When we were after that mini golf outing, when we went back to the hotel, when we were going back to the hotel in the Uber, the Uber was driving a minivan, and he was driving it like very fast, and it was hot in the minivan. We were all overheating. I was texting them in a group chat. I was like, I feel like I'm having a heart attack. I feel like I'm going to die in Vegas. Like I'm going to need to go to the hospital. Like I was having heart palpitations. My heart was beating out of my chest. It felt like, but that was a very fun trip last year. I remember when we got back to the hotel, I sat down and I was talking to a friend named Ed before he got into a poker tournament. And he said, "Dude, you're staring right through me right now." This was probably my face for people watching on YouTube. This is probably my face. As I'm talking to him, I'm staring just straight right through him. And when he said that, I was like, I can feel it with like a biggest grin on my face ever. But yeah, that was a very fun trip. We'll be going there January 3rd, so next week. When episode 23 comes out, we'll be talking about what the trip entails. We'll talk about some sports, but we'll also talk about like FPN, talk about what the trip entails, how fun it'll be, talk about stuff we're gonna do on the trip. What stuff at that time, stuff will have already done. But that'll be a very fun trip coming up. And that was a very fun trip last year. Fun memory of mine from last year. Coming in at number 3, I grouped these two things together. The Eagles versus Giants playoff game in the divisional round last year, and Eagles versus Niners playoff game last year. Both had very similar feelings. Both felt like parties in the second half, like you knew you were going to the NFC champion or the Super Bowl and the NFC championship. For the Giants game, for the tailgate, we had people that I did sports radio with actually come to our tailgate. Dan Steenkamer and Connor Metz. They were calling a basketball game at Drexel, I believe, or LaSalle. I think it was UD versus LaSalle. They called a basketball game and then stopped by the tailgate, which is really cool of them to do, that was a fun, very fun tailgate. And then we whooped up on the Giants 38-7 to move on to the NFC Championship game. And then we whooped up on the Niners 31-7. I don't want to hear the no QB stuff. That's because their own head coach is a choke artist. Put a tight end against Hassan Reddick. But that was a very fun playoff game. NFC Championship felt like a party once you realized you were going to Super Bowl 57. Speaking of Super Bowl 57, that's number 2 on this list. I've talked about that so many times, I don't need to say much about it. That was the best sporting event I've ever been to. And just an all-around fun trip. With the Super Bowl experience we went to, the Super Bowl Music Fest, just all that. Tailgate the day before the game, your emotions are up and down, up and down. That was just a very fun game. Best sporting event I've ever been to. One of the best trips I've ever been on in my life. Super Bowl 57 weekend. And then number 1, graduating from college, from the University of Delaware. My 5th year in college, I've had some hell moments in college. But I was able to get through it. And it's not about the journey. It's once you get that diploma, they can't take it away from you. That was a proud moment, being able to graduate from the University of Delaware, which I'll cherish forever. It shows the hard work that I've put in going through elementary school, middle school, high school, and college. It's a very proud moment. And then having my graduation party with all the friends and family there. You appreciate all them for coming. That's my top memory from 2023, as I graduated from University of Delaware, class of 2023. And now I am part of the Alumni Association and fellow alumni. Before we wrap up, I'll say this part. I am fellow alumni with someone who helped me get to the fantasy championship in one of my leagues. Joe Flacco, as he fed Amari Cooper, and Amari Cooper had 51.5 points. So fellow alumni Joe Flacco from University of Delaware, helping me out, which I appreciate. Alumni stick together. Blue hens flock together. That'll do it for this episode of Uncaged Sports Talk. Remember to tune in next week as we have a fun episode talking about the College Football National Championship. There are the college football playoff games, and then who I think is going to win the college football national championship. Hopefully, my predictions pan out correct. Talk about some NFL football, and then talk about the Vegas trip we're going to be going on. As I leave January 3rd, one of my guests next week will be leaving January 3rd. Another leaves the 4th. But next week, I'll have some guests on. It'll be a more lighthearted episode. Tune in next week. Remember to like, subscribe, and comment on all of our platforms. It is greatly appreciated. Signing off, Luke Saranka and Uncaged Sports Talk.